Welcome to the Fire Time Podcast, where it's never hot enough, slow is fast, and the way to win is to make it so stupidly easy to buy from you that there's no excuse not to. I'm your host, Tim Reed. And once again, I'm so excited to be here today. Welcome to the Fire Time Podcast. Well, hey, we are back for another episode, and this is a really, really cool conversation that I want to share with you. Now, we are, in the middle of season 16 of this podcast, and as we keep charging ahead, I want to share a fireside chat conversation from the HPBExpo a little while ago in New Orleans. I mentioned this a little bit earlier, that while I was in New Orleans, I tried to record as many in-person conversations as possible. Now, throughout this season, there are going to be conversations that aren't in person, but as we looked at making the shift to go from audio only to video, it just seemed like, let's make the most of the time that we actually have together. And so we tried to be really intentional with that. Now, the conversation today was part of a fireside chat series that the HPBA put together as part of the expo. And I was able to record a really amazing conversation between two legends of our industry, Dane Harman and his daughter, Karen Harman-Smeltz, who's been on this show before. Now, the purpose of this was for them to chat, just the two of them with like a small group of people around them about Dane's origin story. Harman Stoves is a just monumental company. They're one of like the foundational companies that really made our industry what it is today. And I mean, Dane Harman is like the innovator of innovators for anybody that knows him. I mean, he's like, he sells the most reliable pellet stove in the world. I remember for years as I was coming up in the industry, I had people say, friends don't sell friends pellet stoves. And my whole thing is, well, unless it's a Harman, right? I mean, there's other pellet stoves that are great, but the name Harman has some substance and weightiness to it. And it's really cool to get some insight into how that all began. Because again, you're going to see this throughout this season as we talk with different, leaders of massive companies in our industry that while from afar, it appears like, man, they've had all this success and they grew this huge business and everything else. It's like when you talk to them, man, it was not easy. And in this conversation with Dane, it's really clear, like it started so small and there was struggle after struggle after struggle, but his persistence and innovation over time led to what he built. And he's actually not done, right? He gets into this later on in the conversation that he's doing work as a consultant now for DS Stoves. And so he's continuing his tradition of innovation and pushing the boundaries of what can be done. So, with all of that said, this is a special conversation. When I saw that it was going to be happening at the expo, I literally reached out and I said, can I record this as a podcast? Because this is the conversation our industry has been wanting to hear for 20 years, to hear, Dane and his daughter, Karen, talk about the early days. And so it was really special to be able to record this. And I think that it's just something that we need to know where we came from and what made us. And this is a conversation that helps inform that. And so I hope you enjoy this conversation with Dane Harman and his daughter, Karen Harman-Smeltz. I hope this is a conversation that you get a lot of value out of. As always, we'll circle back at the end and I'll share a few parting thoughts.
So we're excited about this, and truthfully, as we were planning for it, I'm like, I feel like I should stage it, but we also want it to be authentic. So, when we first were talking about it, it was how are things way back in the beginning when Harman first started, and how did it begin versus how are things now, whether it's manufacturing processes, products, all of that kind of thing. We could be here all day if we wanted to talk about all of those things. So we decided we would start with the beginning of how Harman started and talk about some of the fun challenges and some details that you may not have ever heard before. I just heard one like an hour ago that I never heard before. So you might be in for a treat. So I'll start it off and let him do some talking. And in the beginning, I was 3 years old, and my dad was in the basement a lot welding. And that's about how much I knew about it at 3 years old. So I'll let you take it. How did it start?
Okay, well, we had a basement because we built a brand new house when we got married. I married my lovely wife Gloria here that everybody knows, and so that was one of the wisest moves that I ever made. The other thing is I put a carport on the house with a garage under the carport. It was on a slope. Everything was figured out. We make this amount of money, and the house payment was $150 a month, and this and that and everything. And we were happy. And then our electric bill for 1 month was $40, way up there, right? Well, and so then it jumped just to 100, just like that. Well, and back then minimum wage was $1.25. So, we were making, the two of us together were making $150 a week. So, and we were doing good. I was working at Mack Truck, doing diesel mechanic and welding and so forth. And so that was fine. And then we ended up with this high electric bill. And then from there, I actually moved or changed jobs. I was working at American Heat Reclaiming Corporations, which made giant heat exchangers. They weighed like 13 tons for industry and so forth. And they would roll up, you can imagine a 60-inch wide or 72-inch wide sheet of 1/4 inch that's 50 feet long. And the way they got to be 50 feet long is they weld them together, and then they had this giant rolling machine would roll them up into a big ball that would end up being like 6 feet in diameter. And every spiral in there had to be welded. So you would get a 50-pound box of welding rods and get up there on top of it, and you'd weld all day. And then you'd do that for 2 weeks. So I got to do a little bit of welding there. And so as the prices are, continuing to increase, I started looking at wood stoves, and being a little picky on welding and so forth, I decided to make my own. And that started out by uh, taking Gloria's cutting board, it was a pretty nice one, and a T-square and a scaled ruler, and I made scaled drawings of the first stoves. And then I converted them onto a metal template, put it on this piece of steel, draw around it with soapstone, and then cut it out with a acetylene torch, which I was actually pretty good at. And so you put all the pieces together, and then I'd weld the corners because I didn't have a way to bend the corner. So I actually welded the corners and made it look like it was bent. So uh, then from there, it got to where the people that worked where I did, they saw my stove and they wanted to have a stove as well. So they ended up copying my patterns, and then they were making stoves. And then it got to the point where, uh, hey, can we help you make some stoves in the evenings? So I had, like 3 people coming along home with me after work. This is after I run home. I run to the car, I run to the gym, I work out, and then I come home, and then we start making stoves till, maybe 10 o'clock at night. And got to the point where, okay, we're making 3 or 4 stoves a week. And then I started getting some full-time employees. And so that's when it got more interesting. Excuse me.
Yeah, back in the days when there was only a few being made, and I can add to that, as I was not allowed to be part of the production, but my older sister, who's 3 years older than me, was. So we would paint the silver. We would paint. She was allowed to paint silver and outline the logo, and I was not allowed to do that. And I took huge offense. Not didn't know if you knew that, but I was very sad that I wasn't allowed to have a paintbrush. Yeah, probably a solid move on your part, but
Yeah. So anyway, we had 3 or 4 people then working full time for me in the basement, and it just got to where it didn't pay to go to work. So I asked the company if I can have a 6-month leave of absence, to go build stoves, and didn't talk about whether I'd come back or not, but they would allow me to come back, and so they gave that to me, and that was kind of the end of working for American Heat Reclaiming, and not the end of what I learned when I did work there, but it was how we got into a full-time company. The Harman Stove and Welding Company is what it was, and thought that I would do welding. Well, down the road, that gets to where we didn't want to do that part. We just want to build stoves. So
and also probably worth mentioning, we live in the middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania. So Halifax, Pennsylvania is about 45 minutes from Hershey, 25 minutes from Harrisburg. So it was all family land where my parents' home was. So the shop as we call it, it's now a big manufacturing facility, but then we called it the shop, is in the field right beside my parents' house and still is today. And so that was just a tiny little, what was the first one? How big was the first building?
40 by 80.
40 by 80. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I didn't mention that we built the house in the middle of a 12-acre field, and thought that getting to the point we're going to actually build a steel building and manufacture stoves in the steel building. So I put it down in the corner of the property, figuring, that'll be away from the house. And so we did that, and started building stoves in the new factory, and basically had first a wood stove. It had a heat exchanger on top. It had 8 2 by 4 tubes along the top. It looked like the Lincoln Memorial. And after a while, I realized, you know what, that's never going to work in production, because you got to weld where you can't see. And yeah, I did that because I used to do that kind of stuff where I worked. And, I was, I also worked just before that at Susquehanna Steam and Electric nuclear power plant. So I was a nuclear certified welder, and a lot of times you had to perform miracles with welding. But I didn't want to try to hire the kind of people that need to do that to build a stove. So that's when I come up with the idea of the spiral chamber, where the flue gases go up around and come down through 4 pipes and then out the back. And we put that on the original logo, the Harman Spiral Flame. And some of you probably still have some of those. So that led to a need to add more and grow, and getting to the point where, okay, now we got to get into banking and financing, and the kind of stuff that you didn't really want. I just want to build stoves and make money, and so forth. So started dealing with the banks, and they always wanted to go through the Small Business Association, and then ended up one of the times I really needed to get money to get going with this, and everybody went to Florida for vacation. And then it took like 6 months to get the money, which I did get. But in that time, I couldn't do a lot. What I did improve the products. In other words, that's when the SF 250 and 150, 250, and 350 wood coal stoves, that's when they came to life. So it was a different banking environment. Somehow, I guess they saw that I wasn't taking no for an answer, and I actually got $10,000 one time with no collateral, and you can't do that. So anyway,
I'm going to
yeah,
throw in a fun story on that one too. So, obviously went to several different bankers, and some of them turned them down and said, yeah, we don't want to give you money. We don't think this is going to work. And you fast forward maybe, I don't know how many years later, maybe let's just say 10 years later, 10, 15 years later, and we're at an awards ceremony for the fastest growing companies. And we won the first year, we got second place the second year, and the banks that turned us down were like not even on the list. So, but they were at the event. So it was just a funny aha moment. Like, they probably wish they would have actually given us money back then.
yeah, yeah. We were. I was on the cover of your company magazine. I think it was a Visa magazine or something that they put out. And I heard one of the board members come in and threw the magazine down on the table and said, "Look what we just gave up." These are the guys that wouldn't take our business. But those are all stories. And from there, we would go to like our first show was a builder show in Harrisburg. And I can see where this can run longer than we want to
Yeah,
go.
I think, yeah, yeah. Well, I think that it's fun to talk about. Like, we started out going to the local market, like the Grouts auction. So we had a permanent booth at our little local market in Graz, Pennsylvania. And so growing up, like every Friday night, that's where we were. So every Friday night, it was fish sandwiches and French fries and penny candy at the market, and that's where we sold a lot of stoves. Is just locally. And then it grew and it became, we had some really great uh, distributors in the beginning. And then it was delivering stoves to those distributors growing up and going to a lot of home shows and doing a lot of homework in the trade show booth and things like that. And then it went outside of Pennsylvania, and then it went outside of the United States. And so,
Yeah, I guess a big milestone might have been the trade show in 1980. It was in Philadelphia, and it was called the WHA then, the Wood Heating Alliance. I don't know, some of you shaking your head. Yeah. So there were 300, actually just a little over 300 manufacturers there making wood stoves. And of course, there's, what is there, 50 now or something like that? But that's how many there were, because there was no EPA certification. If you could build a box, put a door on it and a pipe, well, you can prove that with barrel stoves. You know what I mean? You had a wood stove. And so I think we had about six or seven coal stoves there. I remember Kurt Rumens was right across the aisle from us. He's one of the ones I can remember that was there that long ago. And so from there, we picked up dealers and distributor and so forth. And then it grew. And then the next year, I think it was Atlantic City, which was a terrible place because of the unions. It just made it so hard to set up. And the cost, they would deliberately do things to make you have to go get a forklift or whatever. But now I'm getting too far in the weeds here. So
I think it's fresh for all of us that set up booths, even just now. It's so expensive. Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Hey, this is Tim from the Fire Time Podcast, and I hope you're enjoying this episode. Hey, if you're in a situation where you have been struggling with sales and you're trying to find the right tools to help your team grow, then you have to check out Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi is something that we've been working on for the last 8 years, and these are tools made to help fireplace companies sell more products, whether in your showroom or on your website. Just recently, we announced an AI fireplace visualizer where with every website that we build, you can have each of your fireplaces set up to where a customer can snap a picture of their home. It will visualize that fireplace in it so they can absolutely imagine what it will be like, and then you can quote it out for them to buy. To get a demo of this, you can go to wifire.com. Every company in our industry needs the right tools to grow sales. Wifire is going to give you that. So check out wifire.com. Make sure to look at the AI fireplace visualizer because it's absolutely mind-blowing. Hope you enjoy the rest of this episode.
'83 is when I come up with the Mag Stoker feeder, which is for those of you who don't know, it's a anthracite coal stoker feeder, which is automatic. And I got a patent on the feeder and the burn pot, and that burn pot patent is the one that's valid today, and the feeder patent also is valid today. So that the reason it works so well today is anthracite coal has a lot of ash, and pellets don't. So it naturally just pushes the pellets right off there, the ash right off the end of the burn pot. And so that's.
So you're saying, to back up a little bit, so the Vertiflow Stoker system, which was a technology, is what really birthed the Pellet Pro technology and burn pot. So a lot of people don't realize that technology actually derived from a coal stoker technology, and that's where we get the Pellet Pro feeder that we have today.
Yep. And so then, let's see, 1985, I got a pilot license. So no, it was actually 83. 85 is when I bought a Cessna Skylane, which was a pretty nice airplane. And when we got into late 90s or late 80s and started to have the Pellet Pro, we did a Pellet Pro 1. It was Pellet Pro to start with, then the Pellet Pro 1, and I guess you have some. And anyway, at that time, Vermont Castings was being sold to Pacific Core Financial, a banking outfit. Don't know all the details there. And Vermont Castings, at these shows, they were the big dog. They just were much bigger than anybody else. I mean, it was not unusual to sell 50,000 Encore stoves back in the early days. And so Pacific Core then decided that they should try to put a Harman feeder into their stoves. I think it was the Radiant was the name of it. And so it was my feeder and burn pot, and then they decided to make their own burn pot, change the design and so forth. And that's where things didn't work very well, very long. They made 3,000 of them. The other thing they did was took my control board and disabled a lot of the functions. And no, we don't want it to do that. No, we don't want it to do this. And, one of the comments they made when we first got started is, we never did anything that even had a motor on it. Well, you're paying me to teach you. Anyway, being associated with Vermont Castings, though, them being the big dog, then also brings our name up. And we start to get more people saying, well, why don't I just buy a Harman pellet stove instead of buying a Vermont Castings that has a Harman feeder in it? So that's one way that we started to really grow faster when we got into the pellet market.
So through the pellet design, so that the actual aesthetic design of the first, which was the Pellet Pro, versus now with touch controls and the the absolutes, and just talk about that evolution of why they look the way they do.
Okay. You have to make the women happy. In other words, if the women don't like the way it looks, it's not going to work. And I need female supervision. I don't know about you guys, but I have one, two, and I have another one of these. That's a dentist. And between all of them, I get some pretty good feedback. And then, of course, the women in the dealer network. So we, I guess I get a little bit of credit for it, but just keep trying to make it look better and improve the looks of them, and not giving away all the secrets.
Well, and one little fun fact that people probably don't realize and was not intentional is so the Excentra insert in the Excentra grill is a beautiful design. And if you look at it hard enough, you'll notice that it's actually Jesus fish all intertwined together. So a lot of people never noticed that, and it actually was not intentional. I just learned it actually was not intentional. So that's a pretty cool thing, because certainly God's a big reason of why we're here too. So the only reason we're here. So talking more about HPBA, and obviously we're all here excited that, this is all happening again. And, imagine coming to these shows where there were 300 manufacturers, how crazy that would be. I mean, all in a much smaller way, but that's pretty incredible. And it's nice to see that it's growing and that everyone's starting to come back to these events is super cool. I want to talk about marketing too. So there's this phrase called built to a standard, not a price. And I didn't do it because I was like 5. Okay. So talk about how you came up with that.
Well, it was really quality over cost. And if we didn't have a good product and something that people thought was worth buying, it wouldn't work. It was, just I came up with it one day, and there it is. It stuck.
It did stick.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So.
Well, I think back to the manufacturing plant and how much that has evolved. Way back in the day, I mean, the welders were literally like the stove bodies were on the floor and they were bent over welding all day long, just completely painstaking. My job back in those days is I would come down to go across the field to the shop and enter warranties on the computer, the big amber screen, gigantic thing, and I got to clean the bathrooms too, so that was fun. And then I got free lunch. So that was pretty cool. But I mean, since then, just even like stacking stoves on top of each other, I am picturing those first pictures of the shop to when we realized we needed to add on 13 times to that building.
Yeah. And you had an amber screen that's up from the green screen.
That's true. That's true.
That had a 40 megabyte hard drive on it. I mean, you're talking.
Yeah.
That was extra.
Yeah. So talk about like when we got to lasers and automatic bending and things like that.
Yeah. So I mentioned the early stoves where all the corners were welded and so forth, and then so I did get to the point where I had a press brake, and so I could bend corners and so forth. And then also, instead of cutting things out with a acetylene torch by hand, I thought I was really in heaven when I got a automated acetylene torch where you could draw a picture with a line on the table, and the torch would follow that line. You had 3 torches and a head that would follow that. So I could cut 3 stoves out at one time. And I'm talking about like Mark II coal stoves, and they can bend the body around instead of welding the body. And so then the tops and the bottoms still had this acetylene torch edge on it. So that ended up getting sanded and filed and everything else just to make sure that, the quality was there and so forth. And so then the next progression in that is Now we get into AutoCAD, for drawing and so forth. And then that allowed us to get into the CNC punch press. Now we can draw something and put it on a CNC punch press and actually punch out the shape. And then the shape that you punched out had rough edges on it, and you still had to sand and get the corner, the sides straight and so forth. Then in it was early '90s. Trump, TRUMPF from Germany. I bought their first laser in the United States that you put a sheet on and it just goes and cuts a sheet. So this was a big game changer, because now also I moved all the way up to a color monitor for my AutoCAD. It was $3,500 for a 20-inch monitor. So now I'm thinking, man, I'm really doing it
Sure.
now.
Yeah.
And so now I could cut something out with a laser, and the edge was that good you didn't need to sand it. And then you could also cut little tabs and then holes and put a tab in it. And now you don't need to measure something. You just put it through the hole in the tab, or the tab through the hole, and things are dead on. And now you start, instead of manufacturing in plus or minus a 16th or whatever, we're manufacturing plus or minus 10 thousandths of an inch. And then that improved even more with the newer press brakes with precision ground tooling and so forth. You can just move from one station to the next and the next, and just come out with a finished part, instead of you bend this bend and then you got to change the tooling. Now you bend that bend and so forth. So I sense that I'm getting too far.
But one of the things that obviously you can tell, the passion in the detail is a lot of manufacturers, the owners of our company might not know all of those details. So I think that's part of the details that he always has gone into, is knowing how absolutely everything works. He already did every single thing out on the shop floor, so you know how to improve it. And that's pretty impressive, Dad.
Yeah, I guess one of the things I do want to get mentioned in here is how important this show is. I think this is like number 40 for me. So we've got to be all over the country, and see people and be places, but they were hard to do. It took a lot of everything we had to get to the show and have the shows ready, or stoves ready. And as you all know how shows can be. And so we said, well, that was a lot of trouble and a lot of money. But guess what? We sold more the next year and the next year and the next year.
Well, to finish up for these people, what are you doing now?
Okay. Right now I have my own company, DPH Consulting, and I have one client, and it's DS Stove Company. So I'm designing stoves for them. So we have a 40,000 BTU gas stove. We just are introduced that we had last year. Now we have the Homeland 2.9 wood stove, which is top load, cooking grill, all kind of fun stuff to enjoy with that. And now we have the Dawn 40i gas insert, so which has some new ideas and some things that nobody's done yet. So that's what I'm doing now.
Okay, thanks. So we can certainly take questions or get off mic and talk to, but just wanted to thank HPBA for asking us to do this. It is definitely a privilege, and especially knowing that not all of our founders are with us. Certainly Alan Tressler from Quadrifire is not with us as of this year, and I know for a fact he would be buying everybody drinks right now if he was here, so for sure. And then Duncan Syme from Vermont Castings, who we had the pleasure of sitting down with all of them together, gosh, about 2 or 3 years ago, I think it was now. And that was just a super cool moment. And Duncan passed a little while ago as well. And so I know he would be super honored. And some of the things he said is how honored he was that his designs were still important in this world. And so just wanted to kind of pay some tribute to the others that can't be with us here, but are, I'm sure, here in spirit.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Dane Harman and Karen Harman-Smeltz. You know, I mean, in it, I think it's amazing just how authentic that conversation was. I mean, it's cool to hear Dane just kind of telling stories about the early days, and you can tell that like what he built was not done overnight, and it didn't all come easy, but there was a commitment to make something special and serve his customers that he is still living and breathing to this day. And I think it's just such a word for when you are in the midst of the struggle versus looking at it from the other side, right? It reminds me of something that Karen said when she was on this podcast a while ago. And she made a comment about her own career. And she said, hey, there's times where the future you needs the current you to do this work in order for it to be possible. And I think that is such a great mentality to have. Again, like, man, I mean, Dane grew that company into a monster. He sold that company to HHT. He worked alongside after the purchase to still continue and innovate and put out incredible products. And now, you know, he doesn't have to be doing this, but he still has a consulting firm and is working with DS Stoves as his client right now on creating new innovative stuff that helps keep people warm and safe. That is amazing. And when I hear him speak, there is no pretense there. I mean, there is just a heart of humility and just thinking like, hey, this is what I have to offer, and I'm gonna offer it. And I love the fact that he said he's guarded, right, by his wife and by his two daughters. I mean, I know so well how mixed my motivations can be. And so to have guardrails of people around you that are not afraid to speak into your life and tell you the truth, man, that can save you from so many just terrible errors. And I love that was a part of what he brought up. Now, again, talking about what Dane's doing now, I actually went out to DS Stoves about a year ago or so. They had a conference, and I spoke at it and did some teaching and training, and I was shocked again at this company's care for their customers and about how hard they are pushing the bounds of innovation to make something that is useful and that really solves a problem in the marketplace. And it's just really cool that they have found each other. And I know that Karen's doing work over there as well. So from top to bottom, I thought that this was a really special conversation. And this is kind of funny, but like, as I listened to it, I felt like, man, there's so much here from the origin story perspective that I never had on Dane Harman's background. But I've got all kinds of questions about, you know, for further questions about innovation, about marketing, about just how he approaches life. And same thing for Karen too. I felt like there needs to be a part 2 on this conversation where we get into it. So I reached out, and next week's episode is going to be a conversation with them. It's going to be a part 2 specifically around innovation. What is it that makes Karen tick and Dane tick? How are they trying to live and set a precedent of excellence with what they're doing? And for that conversation, I've actually got another really special guest that's going to be a part of it. So, you know, today's part 1. It's the origin story, and you got to hear that straight from him. Next week is going to be part 2, when that's the origin story, and knowing that he built a monster company. He sold it. He continued to work, you know, again, after the sale, and he continues in innovation now. Okay, what is it that makes this guy tick? And by the way, I didn't realize this. Dane Harman actually had like the world record for powerlifting for men over the age of 40, I believe, as he was doing this. We'll confirm that next week, but I believe that is the case. I think that he bench pressed, I think it was 465 pounds. We'll get confirmation on that. But like, there's some determination there. Like there's some discipline and there's some determination in order to do that. So it's going to be a really, really cool conversation, and I can't wait for you to see it next week. Well, hey, if this podcast today has been a blessing for you and you would like to support this show financially, you can do that by going to the website itsfiretime.com/join. That's itsfiretime.com/join. And we're incredibly thankful to those of you who do support this. It's the reason that we can continue to produce content. It's the reason we've been able to jump to video content this season because of that. And it truly means the world. We operate on a shoestring budget. And yeah, it just wouldn't be possible without you. So thank you so much. And if you're not able to contribute, there is no pressure to. We want this to be a gift and a blessing for you. So we hope it's that. So with all of that in mind, as you go out today, I just want you to think about Dane's journey. I mean, this is a journey that's been 40, 50 years in the making. And I want you just to think about this idea that, like, with where you are, if there's struggle and there's difficulty, I mean, it might sound cheesy to say, oh, it's all going to work out in the end. I'm not, being naive, but the reality is, I'm going to go back to what Karen said. The future you needs the current you to do the work now. Otherwise, that future is not going to happen. It's easy to give up. It's easy to be cynical, and it's easy to throw in the towel. But that's not what we do. The future you needs the current you to do that work so that it's possible. Hope you guys have an amazing rest of the week. We'll talk again very soon. Thank you for listening to the Fire Time Podcast. To learn more, visit the website itsfiretime.com. Music from this episode was written and recorded by In Bloom out of Portland, Oregon. We thank you for listening to the Fire Time Podcast, where it's never hot enough, slow is fast, and the way to win is to make it so stupidly easy to buy from you that there's no excuse not to. We'll see you next time.